Well, there's been much politicising of late on borders, and in amongst that, it's easy to lose sight of the fact that these decisions our leaders make affect everyday Australians. Now, the Prime Minister spoke with Peta Credlin on her program this evening just a short time ago, and there's something he said that really struck with me.
We're going to lose so much as a result of this dreadful virus, and we're all sick to the back teeth of this thing. I just don't want us to lose any more than we have to. And whether that's our humanity or whether that's our kids' schooling or whether it's that last hug or embrace or whatever it is, I just refuse to allow that to be lost to this virus.
Now, the Prime Minister is right. So much pain that's been caused, so much suffering that could be avoided, and we can only hope that the Premiers have not totally sacrificed our humanity. Joining me now to discuss this is Sky News host Peta Credlin. Peter, thank you for joining us tonight. Look, there's a lot to unpack here. This particular case involving young Sarah Caisip is just extraordinary. Now, you just had the Prime Minister on your show. He mentioned the fact that he'd made a phone call this morning to Premier Annastacia Palaszczuk. She then, of course, went into State Parliament and accused him of trying to intimidate and bully him on this day, this Are You OK Day, this mental health day. But all he was trying to do was show some compassion and some empathy and try and get this young lass along to her father's funeral. As he said tonight on your show, she will never get that back.
So I was listening to Neil Breen on 4BC this morning, and I listened to this case, and there's been a lot of border cases, as you know, different jurisdictions of people who are struggling to cross these border lines, but it was heartbreaking. And look, we only had Father's Day on Sunday. My dad died a long time ago, but he died about the same age as Sarah is now. So everything she's going through, it just struck such a chord with me. And I'm teary enough on Father's Day anyway. So I was in floods of tears this morning. And I do not use the Prime Minister's number lightly, but I sent him a message and said, I know it's vexed to get involved in one case and not others, but please, please just have a listen to what's happened to Sarah and make your own call. Well, within a minute or so, he was back to me, right? He was straight on to it, and he went and got the transcript, presumably, and listened and reacted. After he called the Premier, he rang me and said, now, look, I've spoken to Annastacia Palaszczuk. I don't want this in the media. Our best chance, you know, I've been in politics a long time, he said, you know, our best chance of turning any politician around is not to have it out in the media, for it to be their decision, right, that they've taken because of some reason they can dream up. So we kept stum, we didn't say anything about it. The next thing I know on Sky, here she is walking into the chamber in Parliament, in the Parliament building, and basically accusing, first, the Prime Minister of bullying her, and secondly, that he's going to make it public anyway. Well, he hadn't made it public. In fact, he pleaded with the media not to make his call to the Premier public. Now, this idea that a woman leader, a la Julia Gillard, or in this case, Annastacia Palaszczuk, get a phone call about policy matters from another leader, be it State Premier, overseas leader, in this case, a Prime Minister, and claim bullying if they're told that what they're doing is unfair or not compassionate, or someone puts forward an alternative view, this is wrong. She is not the victim tonight. The victim is a young girl sitting in a hotel room who had to be accompanied by police. God help us, this is Australia. Police either side of her as she had a look at her dad's coffin. She didn't get to go to the funeral, she didn't get to hug her mum, she didn't hug her 11-year-old sister. Is this the sort of country, Gleeso, we've allowed these tin-pot dictators to make us? It's not Australia. This is not who we are. And I'm so proud of the so many Queenslanders who contacted 4BC, Neil Breen, you know, people all across the country, but particularly the Queenslanders. You don't want this action today to tar your good name. Well, bloody hell, do something about it on the 31st of October, because I just can't see that we should allow this sort of stuff in Australia. And you don't lead a state by hiding behind a bureaucrat. It doesn't work like that.
Well, that's the issue, Peter.
Put Jeanette Young on the ballot paper, mate. You know, put Jeanette Young on the ballot paper.
And, Peter, that's what's been going on in this state throughout the entire COVID pandemic, she's been deferring every decision to Jeanette Young. And we've got these bureaucrats who are sitting there in rooms deciding the fate of whether or not 26-year-old women should be able to go and see, go to the funeral of their father. And today, for her to come out and say that she told the Prime Minister that she would pass on his thoughts to the Chief Health Officer is extraordinary. You've been around politics long enough to know, Peta Credlin, that bureaucrats provide advice, and good leadership is about disseminating which is good advice and which is poor advice. In this instance, you know, the right thing to do, and that's what it's about empathy and compassion. The right thing to do was for her to grant the discretionary power today to allow that young woman to go to her father's funeral.
So we've upended democracy, Gleeso. Officials are meant to give frank and fearless advice. That's the sort of civil service code that we took from Britain to Australia with the public service. Frank and fearless advice. And the people we elect make the decisions. Make the decisions. And these decisions are hard, they're tough, they all have electoral consequences. But in the end, you know, Harry Truman had that sign on his desk in the White House, in the Oval Office, that said, "The buck stops here," right? Annastacia Palaszczuk, yep. The buck stops with you. In the end, our democracy rests on leaders who are accountable to the people, so it's the leaders who make decisions. Now, Jeanette Young's not anyone's ballot paper. She has her job forever and a day, all through this COVID crisis. When families and businesses are going to the wall, she's on a very healthy pay wicket, and she's going to keep that on that regardless of what happened. She had the cheek today to talk about all the exemptions she's given to rich yachties and AFL footballers and all these movie stars, and one of your own. You know, a Brisbane girl born and bred can't get home to see her dad. I just find it shocking. It's wrong. It's callous. It's about as low as you can get.
And compounding all of this, Peter, is the fact we've also got a man who's dying in hospital here in Brisbane, and his 4 children, young children, are in New South Wales, and they are being told that they have to pick and choose which one of them actually can go and see him on his deathbed. Again, it's the inconsistencies with exemptions, Peter. It's the way in which the way in which this has been done so heartlessly and with a lack of compassion and empathy. That's the problem here right now. The problem is that Queenslanders are now getting exposed to what a terrible, terrible government this is.
Yeah, it's all sort of good and well, you know, tough border measures and you're not protected from COVID, and inside Queensland or New South Wales or whatever state it might be, you're free to get around. I get locking out Victoria, right? Victoria's a complete basket case, and I'm in Victoria tonight, living under a curfew and all the rules. We are here because of government competence. You know, lock us out until we sort the problems out in Victoria. I get that. But I don't understand how we've lost our compassion and our ability to deal with exceptions to the rule. That should be something any government is equipped with. That's not happening in this circumstance. It's not happening to the dad of 4 young kids, all under the age of 13. I mean, that's extraordinary. That's inhumane. It's not happening in this case. When you make blanket rules, they are blanket rules, and they're there because it's sort of an equitable fairness that they apply to everyone. But that doesn't mean they are perfect. And that's why you always have a discretion power with a minister. I mean, the Minister for Immigration has a power to overrule the general decisions that, say, the Department of Immigration make on refugees and people coming to Australia and all the other things. You often hear about the ministerial intervention power. It's there for these sorts of cases, you know. And there's that old adage, you know, rules are for the guidance, rules are for the obedience of fools. Rules are for the obedience of fools, but the guidance of wise men and women. And this is where the Premier should use rules to guide her, not to be so constrained by them that she acts so callously as she did today.
It's a fantastic axiom, isn't it? It's one that we should all live by. Before we go, Peter, you mentioned Victoria. Now, it's interesting that the business community have finally run out of patience with this bloke, this Andrews character. Do you think it will in any way affect the way in which he goes forward with his shenanigans in keeping the poor folk of Victoria basically housebound for 23 hours a day?
Look, there was a big show of strength from the business community today in Melbourne, in the Herald Sun. It's been the biggest story in town. We were promised this roadmap to recovery. We've got a road to nowhere on Sunday. There's nothing about recovery in there. Interestingly, I spoke to some very senior people in the state Labor movement and also the federal Labor movement. They are at their wits' end with Daniel Andrews. I get a real sense that he doesn't give a bugger and he's going anywhere. And he's almost, and look, I understand this when you're in the middle of a crisis. When we were working on boats with Tony Abbott, it becomes this all-consuming thing. So he's got this real tunnel vision on COVID, but everything else is falling down around him, and he hasn't got depth in his ministerial ranks to get other people to sort of take on the health piece while he moves and focuses on the economic piece. And there's no point coming out and trying down in December and January to restart the economy. People need, that dual track happening now, the health work being done and the economic recovery being done all at the same time. Now, government's got to be able to walk and chew gum at the same time. Clearly they don't know how to do that in Victoria, and I think this is really going to blow up in the next few days.
Peta Credlin, great to see you tonight. Thanks for joining us on Sky News Across Australia.
Great to be with you, mate.